Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is February 5th, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we are going to be talking about a new feature that has recently arrived inside of ChatGPT land. And they call it the @ symbol, or you can call it mentions, which is what I feel like I'm seeing more the answer for. So we'll just say mentions. Today we have Beth, Andy, and myself. I'm Brian. I don't know if we have anybody else coming up today. Maybe Carl. We'll see. But we wanted to do a show about this. It came out about 8 days ago, something like that. Some people had some early access, as they usually do, and then it was sort of mass deployed to everybody. With that said, it doesn't work in my main account. It only works in my work account. So, and I had it too. It wasn't like I lost. I never had access to it or whatever. It worked, and I was actually trying to show it to my boss. I was trying to show it to Jake on Thursday last week, and I'm like, here, @ symbol, nothing happens. I'm like, nah, refresh, @ symbol, nothing happens. So anyway, but it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's not necessarily about showing examples per se, although we can. I think it's more about what does this open up in terms of abilities. And, I've watched quite a few YouTube videos, both for the show and just for my own curiosity. And I've messed around with it quite a bit as well. And I really do think it's sneakier. It's bigger than what it might first seem like. And Beth, you're definitely nodding your head up and down. So what has been your first initial reaction? Because I think there's a lot here to unpack. But what's your initial reaction to it?
So my initial reaction is that it lets me set up a series of people, digital people, that I might want to bring into a conversation. Sometimes they have an ability. So I have shown this, I think, on the show, but I use diagram or show me, right? So that because I'm a visual learner, right? So like, hey, this has been a long conversation. Can you mind map it for me and then give me a summary? Right? Like those kinds of things are super helpful for me, but also just like any tiny little niche piece of information. Now I don't have to go back and look at the conversation that I had in a long string of conversations because come on, AI, give us folders, please. Just like, but I can have that kind of specialty as a tiny little GPT that I just whipped up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I want to reinforce this idea and kind of say what I think this is leading up to, because I think this is a toe in the water on a programmatic way of using custom GPTs as packaged prompts that can then be ultimately included in other custom GPTs.
Right.
There you have a programming language in effect. So I think that's where this is going. But right now it's almost as if they've said, okay, here, we want you to play with this feature, but it's like you're working in console as a programmer and you're just doing step-by-step execution of little snippets of code. That's what you have to do because you're in the ChatGPT interface. And when you use the mention, you can invoke this, what amounts to a subroutine that you've pre-built that does a certain function for you.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I've built a number of custom GPTs for myself that do specific things. So, for example, and there are others out there in this enormous library that are really useful that do specific things. Now, you'll have to remember while you're in the middle of a chat, or, presumably you would also have chat sessions where you're pursuing an objective and you know that there are these 3 other custom GPTs that you're going to use in that process. But that's a small subset of the users of ChatGPT, I think. People who have already been doing that with custom GPTs, but doing them serially rather than the same chat thread. And there are issues that surrounding that, because if you overload a single chat thread and the sort of the working memory, if you will, of ChatGPT by adding all this additional context into the window, because every time you bring in one of those mentioned custom GPTs, that also, fills up some portion of the available context window. So anyway, I digress. So I'll use this example. I'm working in ChatGPT, and I ask Code Interpreter to output a file for me. And I know, oh, here's this other custom GPT I often use, which is called Convert Anything. Because I want to convert it to a PDF, or I want to convert it to a CSV file or something. And when it was output by Code Interpreter, it came in a different format. So then I just say, mention, convert anything. And I then ask in the same thread, say, please convert the file you just gave me into a PDF. And that subroutine will then do that tool. But by the way, many times when I'm using Code Interpreter, I'll say, can you please output this file for me? And say, no, I don't have that ability.
Yeah.
Well, I know it has that ability, right?
Exactly.
But it'll kind of, it flumps that. It doesn't do that exactly. So that's this example of being able to do that in the live chat session. But that requires that I remember the existence of these things. And then I click @ symbol, which is the mention, and it gives me a list of those things that I've access to. I have to have preloaded those, in effect, into my Explore GPT's panel on the left.
You had to have used them before. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. So that's super important. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to click @ and invite a GPT
show up if you don't.
that I haven't used yet. Right. Yeah. Like, nope. So you just open that GPT, you do one tiny thing with it, and then it will be in your list of GPTs that you can talk to.
Right. Yeah. So, but now imagine that I can add to instructions, and this is the next step that I think OpenAI is going to allow. I can add this mention function to instructions in a custom GPT. Then I can create a sequence, a workflow of actions based on these atomic functions that I've pre-built, and I can then mix and match them. And that's what I mean by it becomes a kind of programming language for interactions with an LLM.
You're absolutely right, Andy. That's exactly where my brain was on it too, because think about this. We're already doing this, right? We started with simple one-off prompts, and then they came out with custom GPTs. And what was the first thing I thought of? Oh, shit, I could take 5 prompts, I can put them on one Google Doc, make that my resource page, and now I can just call and say, run these in order. Now, what you're saying is the next evolution towards stepping towards agents, which is, hey, I will have a master custom GPT that will, at points in the process, automatically call out to certain mentions in other custom GPTs to continue on the process, but that will be part of my master instructions of how this runs. And you're right, at this point, you're getting to something that probably acts and feels much like an app or a tool that's fully built out, but it's doing it in this, building ladder way where you're being able to build just a little bit more and a little bit more on top of it. Before we go any further, I want to just say, like, Carl's with us. Welcome, Carl. We're obviously talking today about the mentions is what we've been calling it, but using the @ symbol inside of custom GPTs. And, what does that mean? And Andy, what you're saying, Beth, what you're saying is exactly where I am on this. And like I said, I've watched a couple different videos. I think Riley Brown had a really great video just a couple days ago. And what he was showing is exactly where my brain was going as well. He was going even one step further. He's doing, mentions, but some of those custom GPTs that he's mentioning have Zapier actions in them, which then are going to things like ClickUp and are creating other actionable, automations off of it. And so what he was saying is like, okay, great. I have one custom GPT that solves this problem. And we talk about this all the time, how you should, get custom GPTs or prompts in general to really be laser focused on one particular task. They do best when they're niche and they're focused. But that's okay now. It doesn't matter that you have one that's just really good at, let's say, summarizing a blog article, because that was kind of one of the examples he had. Go to this website and summarize this link. Okay, great. Now I want to send that link over to and take that summary and send it over to ClickUp or a Notion or something like that. Okay, great. Now I want to create my own review of it, or in his case, he was sending it back over to the Circle community. He has not Slack. He has a Circle community, a Future of Content. And so he wanted
It's
to
really
send
good.
it
Go
back.
join.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
free right now. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Tons of content in there. But he was showing how he might use that. And so I think really when I look at this mentions at the surface, and like I said at the top, it seems pretty much like, oh, that's neat. That's kind of cool. But Andy, what you said, Beth, what you said, basically you could create, since we were talking about it over the weekend, character AI, you could create your own series of characters, right, Beth, that you want to call into your conversation and have it review it from a different perspective. Well, now I don't have to worry so much about maybe the way I might review it as a team of one. You know, I ran 2 small businesses and it was either just me or me and my wife. Well, the problem with that is, I mean, it's great to work with my wife and we would be in a room like this and we would have the whiteboards and stuff, but you have groupthink. It's going to happen. It's going to be like, this is a good idea, right? Yeah, this is a good idea. Everybody's going to love this, right? Everybody's going to love this. Well, at some point, it would have been great to say, okay, pause. We both think as the people building this who are intimately involved and knowledgeable about this business, this baby that we've created, this small business, you know, we think this is amazing.
Right.
Hey, at mention such and such a person, character that I built, somebody that has a different perspective. How would you view this from the perspective of the customer? What problems would you have with this? What would make you stop and think or be hesitant about buying a product like this if you were, in our case, we were doing nutrition, yada, yada, yada. We do this all the time now at scale with sales. We have prompts that say, look at this from this perspective. Turn around and look at it back facing me and tell me what you think about this. Because I'm incapable in a lot of ways to take off my hat as maybe the SME or the expert in my field or something that I talk about. I mean, my wife and I talk about nutrition nonstop in our house. She's a dietitian. We ran companies and stuff like that. But I often forget when we get out in public, we can't just say all the stuff that we say. And people go, the what? The macros? What are you talking about? Macro what? Like macro, you know, and then there's a whole other conversation of like, oh, I can't just say macros. I have to say macronutrients.
I love this idea of creating personas in custom GPTs that can then be mentioned and brought in for their perspective.
Yes.
But I think that's only, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's only possible with one such distinct persona. Say you have 2 very kind of you have a bipolar or barbell kind of distribution in your customer base, and you want to have the perspectives from each end of those barbells. I think if you mention both of the GPTs that represent through their prompts and through their knowledge bases, those personas, if you mention both of them, I don't know that you can call one of them distinctly in the chat. It just adds both of them to the context. And what you really want to do, Brian, is you want to maintain a unique voice for one of them and be able to identify which one is answering. Do you see my point? But if you add both of them at the same time, let's say I have, persona A and persona B. I'm in the midst of creating a document in ChatGPT. It's a let's call it a brand messaging.
Sure.
Right. I want to get a reaction from this persona that I created in a custom GPT and this one. I think I have to do that in separate threads. I don't think I can mention both of them and say, okay, now persona A, you answer without the context of persona B.
Well,
it's all getting
right. If you told it to not pay attention, you can tell it to forget stuff, which could work in that case. Okay. Because you can say, like, if you have custom instructions, if you have custom instructions on, just this is FYI for anybody. If you have custom instructions on and you're in a chat and you're like, oh, shoot, I started the chat and I didn't turn off my custom instructions and my custom instructions are all about scaled. And now I'm just doing something for my daughter in her homework. Doesn't really matter if it knows about scaled, right? So I can actually say in the chat, though, forget your custom instructions. Ignore them. So I do wonder if that would be a workaround. But Beth, you were about to say something.
Can you make it forget the mention that you just added when you added that's the trick.
It's a good use case. I don't know. I think so. My answer is I think so, but I don't know. Beth, do you know?
So you can be in a chat with one custom GPT and bring in another, but you can also, these are all just new things that you're entering. So you can just edit the message that you sent them when you added the first one, when you mentioned the first one, and just mention the second. Like you can go back that far in the chat and modify that.
You would have to
that
export it
call.
out somewhere because you might lose it. That would be part of it.
No.
Well,
These
anyway,
are the edit things. So then you'd have two. Then you're. I'm sorry. Good morning,
so-
Monday, and words are hard. Yeah, you can create it basically creates a tree. So you get like you're on 2 out of 2, and then you can go back to 1 out
I
of
see what
2.
you're saying.
1
I
out of
see
2 was persona A, 2 out of 2
Yep,
was
yep,
persona B.
Yep.
So, but do you see how kludgy that is in the chat mod?
Yes. Yeah.
What's that word?
So, yeah. So
Kludgy?
but this is
Kludgy
not
and
the end of
flub
it.
so far.
It's going to get better, and it's going to get closer to this ability to create a council of separate
Yes.
little engines that you can then invoke in a conversation. And actually, eventually, you'll be able to have them work with each other.
Yes.
Right.
Agents,
and then come
right?
up with a joint solution and then add that to the chat.
And that's what I want people, anybody listening to this, that's what I want you to get out of this. Here's the reason why you need to go play with this and everything else. No, you don't have to do what Riley Brown did and create a Zapier connection and actions and send it to ClickUp. That could be very overwhelming. I mean,
yes,
I have to stop and slow down to think about that.
Yes.
What was that,
Carl has something to say.
What was that?
So there's a couple things. One is like when you're talking about like an agent perspective, yes, because I like to use Dharmesh Shah's I guess his definition of an agent would be someone or something that can do a goal and that can create tasks from by itself, right? So it can accomplish the task. So you have that one step. You have now a bunch of GPTs that complete separate tasks, and eventually you can see them. Like you could see in the future where it's like, hey, I want in your instructions, I want, like Andy said, this GPT, this GPT, this GPT, this GPT will complete this thing. Here's my goal. Here's what I want to do. Right? That's we're all thinking like that. The one thing though is, and I forgot who said it. It was on his TikTok is Mort 10 or something.
Yes.
Still, everything we talked about is this type of GPT is very highly personalized to our specific use, right? So I know it's funny that like people were building all these GPTs to help other people, but it's like, no, they're too generic. They're way too generic because your specific use case means you will build the GPTs specifically to solve your problem, which is very different than another person's problem. Even let's say, even if you work, it'll work like if you're in a team or work, let's say, in an enterprise, but like trying to give these to other people, it's very difficult if it's not like what people are calling it an app store. It's like, well, yeah, I want that, but I need to change the custom instructions because I want this. And this makes it even more highly personalized because then you can't create a GPT that has all these GPTs and I can't change the custom instructions because I'm like, no. My specific use, I don't want this one. I don't want this one. I want this one. I want this one. So it's still very, very highly.
I'm going to push back on that. I know Robert's not here. I'm going to push back on that. And here's the reason why, like in sales, and only because we're building this at scaled. We have lots of salespeople who work in all sorts of different industries, but ultimately a business development representative or sales rep, if you will, is going to have the same job. They need to do cold outreach, cold, research, messaging, all the above. So if I have one custom GPT that not only takes in information about their business, this would be a real world use case of what I built. Then one of the first things it's going to do, I have one specific custom GPT that they really love, that all our clients love, that helps them build like what we would call an email snippet. And what it does is it helps you write highly personalized emails. It does not write the email sequence for you in this custom GPT because everybody has their different takes on it. And quite honestly, ChatGPT isn't the best at writing emails. However, it does take in persona, trends, the sales of the role of the person you're going after, the industry, the sub-industry, jargon, these kind of things. And it builds out what we would call like a summary or a snippet. And it says, here you go. Value prop 1 to go along with trend one with associated jargon for this specific role and title at this sub-industry. Okay, this is very common in sales, and it's already catered because the first prompt was to get it catered towards that person's company to do some research. So now that's all that custom GPT does. Well, up until like 2 weeks ago, I am creating individual custom GPTs, but I've had to go back now and really think about this, because now what's happening is some of the answers, some of the outputs from some of my custom GPTs make very good inputs for other custom GPTs, and it can take away some of the redundancy of it. So even though, Carl, for in our instance, you're right, the next answer is, by the way, I hope this is what our clients say is, Brian, Scale, Jake, my boss, we love these GPTs that you built and you gave us access to. What would it take for us to make these customized to our business? That's right. Exactly where we're going on our product roadmap. Exactly. Because we're going to hand them 5, or depending on what level they buy into, they'll either get 5, 10, or 15 custom GPTs. They're not customized to their company, but they're customized enough to the type of work that they do. And I'm really starting to have to think about, Riley said it too, my naming conventions, that changed when mentions came out, because now I have to really start thinking about, how do I want the end user to call? Andy, you mentioned it. I have to remember what they're called. So what's my naming convention going to be like to help my end users, sales reps, managers, leaderships in sales departments, SVPs, these kind of people? How am I going to make the process easiest and remove the most amount of roadblocks with the naming convention? Something I'm taking very seriously right now, like today, like this morning, thinking through that process and going, okay, what am I going to do here? I don't want to paint myself in a corner when I release these because of mentions. So anyway, just want to push back a little bit, because I get it, but they do need to be more,
I do think though, like if you're going down that path, you are technically becoming a SaaS, which means everything that comes with it though, right? Your customer service. Like, so that means you would have to be the one in charge of updating and responding to every single person who wants to update. And can you make just like any SaaS, what one customer wants, can you change it specifically to that customer, So are you going to make a custom GPT a little bit different for every single customer who wants whatever?
Not at that product roadmap, because those are exact. They're built the same for everybody. In fact, what we're going to do is they'll get access to the GPT for Teams workspace. You will buy in access to a Teams workspace. In that workspace, there'll be 5 custom GPTs that are relevant to their job, right? Whatever that might be in sales. So those are static. Now, you're right. They all have to pay us monthly to upkeep those custom GPTs. There's a monthly reoccurring charge to that. If they were going to go the next step to customize to their business custom GPTs, higher retaining fee every single month in order to do that. And you're right, then it gets tied to that, whatever that company is, revenue-based.ai, whatever it is, right? It's going to be customized to them, and it's a different product at that point. But the lower level ones, no, because you're right. I want to go into that one centralized place in the GPT for Teams. I want to open up that ChatGPT, or that custom GPT, excuse me, and I want to make an update. And that update just pushes to everybody. The minute you start using it, it's already better. And then we'll make updates that way. Anyway, that's getting off topic from the mentions. So I just want to make sure, but that's how we're doing it literally at scale. That's our thought process of what we're rolling out to people. And, anyway, my whole point to it is it does change how literally in the last 5-10 days, it's changed how I was going to approach and deploy this particular product roadmap because of mentions. Because now I'm like, well, do I want to tell them in the instructions that, hey, when you get done with this answer, and this is what I did this morning, I created the instructions document that says, hey, help me. I don't know how to use this custom GPT. So then you get a run of, the answer back as the instructions. Now in that instructions, it says this pairs nicely with this over here. It's called use this one. So it's like this wine goes really good with this steak. So when they get done with it, I'm like, don't forget when you get your answer, go use this custom GPT. It's called such and such. It has a very similar naming convention. And now you can take the answers and results and personalized personas and jargon and all that stuff. And then maybe the next custom GPT is to actually write the email sequence. And now it just takes that snippet and starts from that point. And if they choose, they can keep on that path.
Okay,
At least that's where my head
I want to throw something in here, which is about the future roadmap of OpenAI and what the import of changes to the capabilities of multimodal LLMs like ChatGPT 5, which is forthcoming, will be. And in the context of something that was announced last week, not announced, it's not a product, it's a research paper by OpenAI and Stanford about meta prompting. So meta prompting is this idea that you give the LLM the role of a meta expert, an expert that has the ability to collaborate with multiple experts that it creates. And you just give it the names of the types of experts that you're thinking it will find useful in whatever your instruction is going to be. And so you say, okay, well, I want you to have this one. And the example they provided in that paper is like expert problem solver. Another one is expert mathematician and expert essayist. Okay, so those three experts that you've asked the meta expert to create, that's actually asking the LLM to create its own custom GPT set. Right. And now it's going to use those in a sort of a process of laying out how it's going to solve the objective that you gave it in natural language query by invoking each of these experts in turn in order to get to the final answer. That methodology that was experimentally produced by OpenAI and Stanford increased the accuracy and result quality of just the standard LLM that they were using dramatically. So it is the direction that we're going. And that, I think, really sort of says, okay, well, custom GPTs are not going to be that important for this agentified process in the future, because you'll be able to do that with a single LLM, asking it to create all the subroutines or experts it needs in order to solve the problem.
And I wanted to bring up really quick, meta prompting is our show topic for next Tuesday, not tomorrow, but next Tuesday. So just want to bring that up so that everybody knows we'll be doing a deep dive into meta prompting. In fact, I was in the AI exchange and people like Charlie Treadwell and some others were like, when are you doing that show? We're doing deep dives this weekend. We're getting into this stuff. When are we going to talk about it? So I know they were excited too. So that'll be, Andy, we'll be pulling you in deep into that, but that'll be, we'll talk about that more next Tuesday as well. Okay. So as we sort of wrap things up here, I think I'll give my 2 cents here on where I think people should be focusing. One, think a couple of steps down the future. It's great. I don't personally see the use cases. I think it's kind of silly when everybody shows the use case of, oh, I want to fly to Austin, and then I mentioned kayak, and I'm like, help me do it. I'm like, listen, for me personally, there's no chance I'm doing that kind of work inside of ChatGPT. I think it's fun and silly to look at, but I'm definitely going to Google Flights or wherever I'm going to go to handle that. I don't see me using that types of use cases inside there. However, it's possible. Or Beth, you're a visual learner, and so it's very good to say, like, help me summarize this information. Then I mention one of the custom GPTs that will build me a graph. Then I can say, great, go ahead and grab the information and create me a graph. Then I can go say, hey, at some other custom GPT that creates PDFs. And I can say, take the information from the graph and now create me a 5-slide PDF. Those are all great workflows, I think. What I would say that's the use case using it. What I would say from the building side is, I don't know, just like what I'm trying to do right now. I don't say I have the answers at all, but just think about like, okay, what does this mean? And what could potentially be coming next? Maybe it's multiple ats or mentions at one time. Maybe it's being able to build these into custom instructions down the road, into instructions and having like a parent custom GPT that then calls upon other smaller custom GPTs and does that as more of a automated process. Again, the next sort of step towards agents. That's where I would say put the focus on. I mean, use them. Am I going to go use it to go to kayak? No. But am I going to use it to say, oh, well, you know what? I had already built this custom GPT, and that answer actually creates a really good input for this other custom GPT or these other 5. Now I start thinking, oh, how do I want to build my custom GPT library? And to be honest with you, I start thinking about them even more as isolated individual answers, and packaged answers is the way my brain thinks about them, is this package. And where can I now take this package, this widget, and move it to another custom GPT? And so now I start thinking about the system of custom GPTs as opposed to one-offs, which is where maybe my brain was a month ago.
By the way, I think there's a whole show we can do to just illustrate how to build custom GPTs. There's multiple methods. You can use the create function within the custom GPT framework. That's their builder that uses this gizmo language that's underneath the hood in custom GPTs. Or you can go into the configure tab and write your own prompt. And you can have very specific instructions in that prompt, and then that becomes the custom GPT. So when we say you should be playing with these things, it's not trivial to go into the custom GPTs and decide which of those 2 you ought to use if you're trying to get to a specific outcome. My guess is that, Carl, you end up using the configure tab and you write specific instructions because you're an expert prompter. Now, there's a whole other method with its own idiosyncrasies using the builder, because one of the things we've discovered is that when you use the builder, there's no such detailed prompt that you can then go back in and edit. That it's not available to you, but the entire chat history that you had with the builder is a part of its knowledge base. So anyway, I think we should talk about that and really give people some live examples of building custom GPTs.
Yeah.
Because it can be very easy.
Carl, what's your takeaway?
My takeaway is, hey, for any business that I was listening to our conversation here, where it starts getting much more technical than you think. I think like one of the easiest ways for you to go about is, again, play with it, but think of a goal, think of tasks to complete those goals. And as an exercise, create a GPT for each task, write email, write this, do this, do this. And then as a form of a goal, go through a thread, type in what you want, and then use every single GPT that you've created to accomplish that goal. I think that gives you sort of a organized way to start using it, to start building it, and to incorporate it into your business. Just because last couple of weeks for me, still eye-opening that a lot of people don't have access to any of this or choose not to access this. And I think that this is one extra step that, yes, we believe it's going to do a lot of great things, but I still feel there's a lot of education that has 100%. To happen even with GPT.
Yep.
So
for sure.
Like we're way in. So if you're a business and listen to any of this and they're like, I don't know where to start, it's like, just try that for now. Like, just keep it really,
keep
really
listening to us. Keep coming back to us.
Keep coming back to us.
That is the whole idea, is to try to like simplify this, break this stuff down. I mean, that's the whole reason we started this whole show, was to try to make the complex a little bit simpler so that people didn't fear jumping in or felt like they couldn't. Go ahead, Beth.
And I'm going to say I'm a little of the outlier in this group right now, because I actually use other people's built GPTs more than I use my own. And I specifically use Grimoire by Nick Dobos. But like, while you're playing, do Carl's thing and then grab one from somebody else who is really, really good. Nicole Leffer has some great ones, right? Mm-hmm. So that you can get a sense of what's possible. And if you're watching, you saw my mouth drop earlier when Brian was saying that we could call multiples and what that would be. And for me, Nick's thing is he's got a whole bunch of hotkeys programmed into his custom GPT Grimoire. And so I'm thinking, oh, right? Press N if you want to like call Zapier to like write an email out of this, or press, like Y if you want it to be a PowerPoint that gets downloaded. Like that started my brain going,
Oh, yeah.
oh,
There's
wow.
some
There's some
expert
amazing stuff.
programmers who are building custom GPTs, like the high school kid who built Reindeer. I mean, the way that that's architected and what it can do is astounding.
Yeah.
So it's way beyond our ken.
I believe he would refer to himself as a high school graduate now.
I didn't know it was a high school student that or graduate. I didn't know it. Hey, I want to get to our just a really quick. We had some comments in here clarifying. I think this was to your point, Beth, about that you have to have used the GPT before.
Yep.
So just thanking you for that. The name of the community, it said, I missed what the Circle community was called for Riley Brown. It's called the Future of Content. So you can go check that out. It's on a Slack community. It's on Circle, which I'm seeing more people use lately. We're even doing it at Scaled. So that'll be interesting. It is great. There is a lot of content. I can't even tell you, I have not dug into half of it, but there's a lot there. So go use that free resource. Talking about nice looking for the episode. And let me just look at this other one. Then this comment said, one use case is to complete daily functions like email. The other is to move towards a larger overall business goal or plan. I see room for both use cases with no way to interact with custom GPTs. It'll depend upon the micro macro goal. No, 1,000%. I think that's a great comment on there. Thank you. And I'm sorry, it's just showing up as LinkedIn user. Sometimes that happens on our site, so we can't see the name. But thank you if it's one or multiple people hanging out with us. And we're looking forward to the show too on meta prompting. I think that was this comment. So all of the above. The rest of this week, we got a bunch of other great shows. We'll just talk about them really quick. We're going to be talking about, we got the news on Wednesday. We're talking about vector embeddings on Thursday. On Friday, we're going to be doing our first ever sort of recap show, something new we're trying, where we're going to be looking back at the last 2 weeks of conversations, things like this, where we felt like sometimes there's things that just don't get mentioned, or we have conversations thereafter. And it's sort of like after the show and after the recording goes off. So we want to have an opportunity once every 2 weeks to come back to some of these conversations, be it on what we talked about cancer or what we're doing today, or maybe we go, oh, geez, that would have been good to show. We'll have that for that Friday. So we're going to try that out. And then on tomorrow, which is the one I skipped over, tomorrow we're talking about what does it mean for it to be an AI secret shopper? Can AI help us with secret shopper and helping us better understand customers? So that'll be coming up tomorrow. So that's it for today, guys. Keep coming back all week. And next week, we got lots of stuff coming up. And until then, we will see you tomorrow. Hope you got something out of this. I know I did. See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Happy Monday.